Today I am joined by Frank Mand, one of two candidates who's running for an open seat on the planning board in the town of Plymouth. Welcome, Frank.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. We'll get right into the questions.
Good.
All right, question number one. Accessory dwelling units. The controversial bylaw recently passed at town meeting. Did you agree with this, and what is your opinion on potential negative ramifications and positive outcomes?
Well, I think it went through the kind of process you hope for in a town meeting form of government. It had several iterations, several attempts. They failed, and it finally came back, and people approved it. And I think that's the process that should happen. Now, of course, everything has good and bad aspects to it, or potentially so. And you worry in some communities, some neighborhoods, that a plethora of these units could change the character of the community. And some people will feel that it's imposing on them, and other people will see it as a benefit. But I think it probably won't happen in a rush. I think the kind of thing that is required, or the necessities that are required, the regulations, will dampen down any rush for a lot of ADUs, and eventually it'll be a positive thing. One of the things, I had a discussion with someone about having the best possible ADUs. And there are examples across the country, whether they're called little houses or others, where people have designed very specifically with this type of unit and this type of need, and made them very efficient, made them resilient, almost modular in some cases. I think we should look into all those things. I think the town, and maybe with the state's assistance, should try to facilitate the best kind of ADUs happening. So in the long run, we do need more affordable housing. We do need to keep people in their homes if they want to be, if they can't afford it. And this is a good option that's been vetted by the town, and I think it deserves a chance to see how it works out.
Okay. Do you think this will help more for seniors that can stay in their home, or for other people that are looking for affordable places to live?
That's a good question. It could be that people approach homeowners and look to have, maybe they have an association, maybe they're family or not family, they know of this, and they make an approach to a homeowner and say, we'd like to have an ADU, we only need this much. It could fill a lot of different resources. I'm not really aware of how many places they could fit and how many situations allow for them, but potentially it could be, to use that scary term, workforce housing, right? Little ADUs that are efficiencies, they might end up being the perfect thing for people starting out in life. And so I think it's an option that I'm glad that we have. We need so many options. We need so much flexibility to deal with the challenges that we have nowadays. So I'm in favor of it, and I think ultimately it'll be a very positive thing.
Okay. Just one question for the people that are concerned about parking, traffic, and the pollution of the ponds.
Oh, well, I'm concerned with all those things within the neighborhoods, and hopefully this can be a process. I'm not sure what the special permit process is that allows them to happen, but hopefully that's an open process where we can have the best siting in these. But yes, I'm someone very concerned with the quality of our water, and we have 450 ways that we can pollute that aquifer. They are the 450 ponds of Plymouth. So I really would not like to see them in any way encroaching further onto these ponds. I'm in favor of, if not requiring, having a set of criteria that people that live on our ponds understand, so that they don't pollute them further, so they have the right kind of septic systems, so that they don't fertilize their lawns to the degree. We're actually, I run a conservation group, or help run one, and we are actually doing an assessment of ponds in Plymouth. We have a new water testing station in our facility at Center Hill, and I'm a little bit dismayed at what we're finding, because even ponds in areas where you would expect them to be pristine have suspect water quality, or let's say not the perfect water quality you would hope to see. So I really think we need to look at that as well, apart from ADUs.
And that needs to be built into the ADU process,
yes.
However. Okay. Question number 2. Plymouth Holtec Land and Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund. Let's talk about that. The 1,530 acres will eventually go up for sale, And the addition of $500,000 that was voted on at town meeting, the fund now has nearly $10 million in it. Plymouth will have the first right of refusal on that land. Let's talk globally. What is your opinion of the land, of the Nuclear Mitigation Fund? Go.
The Nuclear Mitigation Fund or the Special Holtec Fund?
I'm sorry, the Holtec. Plymouth Holtec Land and Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund.
Oh, they're combined, I guess you're saying. Well, I have a long history with concern for and desire for the acquisition of not all those 1,500 acres, but of essentially the highest and most pristine land. It's something very special. And I think there's no way we should pass like we passed 20 years ago on the Pine Hills property. The state was going to give us money to acquire that at a very reasonable rate. We passed on that. I'm not saying the Pine Hills is a detriment to the community at all, but at the same time, I would have loved to acquire that property back then when it was pretty cheap, relatively speaking. So going forward, we really need to be upfront and outspoken. I would hope to see the town leaders, the select board lead on this and say we are going to preserve that property. It's not the whole 1,500 acres again, but approximately 1,100 acres or so. It is a property that is kind of a mini Acadia. It is one of the, if not the closest property between Acadia and the Carolinas within a mile, a high point within the mile of the coast. It has some astounding views if you've ever been up there at the tower or in the general area. And I don't believe we should sell that to the highest bidder. I don't believe that only certain people should have that vista. And it's undeveloped property. It's pretty much in its natural state. So it's really a biodiverse and wonderful area that produces much more than it does just visually. So I really hope to see we preserve that. Now, down in the valley, so to speak, down along Powerhouse Road, there's 200 to 300 to 400 acres, depending how you cut it, that could be a perfect place for light industrial or commercial property. It doesn't have the greatest access. Most commercial properties want to be things like we have at the Plymouth Industrial Park. It's right off the highway. They don't have that, and coming along Rocky Hill Road there is not exactly the best access. But there's potential other ways it could be utilized, or different organizations that wouldn't have a 9 to 5 routine, so that we could develop that from that perspective. So I really think that's a diamond in the rough, that other portion from from a commercial point of view. And I would hope to see that we could find a development for that. I know there's a lot of talk about commercial development. I think there's more space than we admit to. It just takes a little bit of aggressiveness and assertiveness to make these things happen. But did I answer the full question?
Yeah, I think you did. I have a couple of follow-ups. So you're saying of the 1,500 acres, 1,100 you would love to keep pristine, whether that's trails and parks or just open conservation land that can't be built on. So that leaves about 400 acres that you could actually develop. That's a lot of.
It is.
That's a lot of space.
And it's kind of my general approach to what I think we need to do going forward. I don't think any large parcel of property should be completely developed. It should always be the preponderance in open space and other areas, and then a concentration in a small area. It's kind of the notion of cluster developments were supposed to be. They were supposed to be a majority of open space. They were supposed to reduce sprawl and yet provide condensed, concentrated development of many kinds. And I don't think we've really made that happen. I think that's we have cluster developments all around town, but around them are other homes, and around them are other things. So we have no way achieved what they were supposed to achieve. That's the old master plan, what it asked us to do, and we didn't really implement it. So going forward, I think the Holtec property is a possible perfect example of how to proceed. Preserve most, let's say 2/3 or so, and concentrate development in an area that's more amenable to it and available as well, and then move on. I'm not somebody who believes, though I'm accused of being like, a tree hugger per se, that thinks that no property can have any development on it. I think maybe the model is actually the larger portions having small developments, concentrated developments, and preserving more. Because truly the best way to keep taxes down and keep our budget in shape is open space.
Right.
It returns more per dollar spent than an awful lot of other types of development because it doesn't require infrastructure. It doesn't require roads. It doesn't require safety personnel. So I think we need a paradigm shift, but I think Holtec could be a great way to move in that direction.
So let me ask you something that's a little went off the track here a little bit, something you said. So if we wanted to have a concentrated commercial development in some of those 400 of the 1,500 acres, there's the height restriction.
Yeah, I think.
Now, do you think in some cases the height restriction is not a good thing because now you can't? Let's say a company wants to come in and they want to build a 10-story building that has a campus, let's say.
Yeah.
And everything else is going to match with what the town wants.
I think there's a lot of ways to approach that, and I don't think a few higher buildings is, a deal breaker by any stretch. As a matter of fact, it might be a deal maker in some instances. But again, it's the right situation. In some places in town, they're building really high properties or want to build really high properties, and it's in areas that really change the character of the community, that are maybe too visible, maybe too close to other things, and also have a lot of concentration of development already. So yes, on a case-by-case basis, I think that's something that we should always look into. I know at least the initial plans that the people from Boston South, the horse track and casino people, are now talking about.
We'll get to that. I have another question on that. That's a whole separate question. One other thing on this Holtec land, do you know of any ramifications of the fact that it's land that had a nuclear power plant on it?
Well, there is that. I don't know how many acres it is, and that's not even included in this discussion. The 1,500 acres we're talking about are mainly land outside of the main plant area. So it's that area on the eastern side of Rocky Hill Road before you get to the plant, or when the plant's invisible, leading all the way up to Powerhouse Road. That area in there, sure, I don't think anybody wants to be there. Not for the next 50 years or 100 years, sad to say. But the Powerhouse Road area, now there's always rumors and innuendo that, there's things buried there. I hope to heck that it's not, because that area would be perfect for that. And of course, no one would go into that without doing their due diligence, which in this case would mean core, borings and things like that.
Okay. All right, great. Now, speaking of the woodlot, question number 3. The woodlot is 100-plus acres of land owned by the county and leased currently to Boston South.
Right.
A controversial proposal for a horse racetrack was not approved, and their future plans for use of this land has not been officially presented. What would you, as a member of the planning board, like to see done with that land? And what kind of leeway would you give Boston South with things that they might want to propose?
Well, I think you have to have the right context for this.
Okay.
And the context is that the county has been, for want of a better phrase, screwing around with this for a long time.
What do you mean by that?
15 years ago, they proposed, and it never went anywhere, a alternative energy wonderland with a dozen or less giant wind turbines and all sorts of things. But they were just blue skying it. They were looking to find a way to make revenue out of this property. At that time, which was 2008-9, the economy had gone down into the ground, and the county was in real trouble. They were laying off people and things like that. So they began to explore any way to get revenue. And that's when they first started talking about using that property in some sort of commercial fashion. So they got to the point where they actually proposed, and I can't remember how many years ago this was, but let's say 10 years ago, they actually proposed essentially flattening it and putting in like a 50-acre or more solar array. That's when the neighbors and conservation groups and others took notice and said, no, this is not the proper use for this property. It has historically been used for the people of the town. The notion of it being called a woodlot was, the old Pilgrim notion that they divided the land. You could get wood from this place or water from that place, and they had it was kind of the Commonwealth notion, the common. And so, let's see.
So that was like 2014, about 10 years ago?
I can't really say there's been so much going on, but people got up in arms about it, and at least that didn't go forward. But they wanted money so bad that the county sold or leased the highest point of the woodlot, a 5-acre portion, to a local sand and gravel operation, and they drove their bulldozer in and took the whole hill, and now it's a giant dirt bowl. And they were supposed to restore it. I haven't been in there in a while. I don't think they did restore it. But the context is that the town as well was saying, don't do this then.
Okay.
The town leaders at that time did not want to see them flatten the property. They did not want to see that kind of use or overuse of the property. And they fought them. They fought access, and it became a matter of, can they find access to their property, that is the county? And the county ended up buying this little sliver which gave them access from a person that lived on Long Pond Road. And so then they began to move forward with plans, and they said they were going to have a process. I'm sorry, this is long context, but the county promised a process to develop or find the best possible use of the woodlot. They met like 3 times and stopped meeting. 6 months goes by, a year goes by, COVID happens, and out of the fog of COVID, they came up with their own best use for the property. And what was it? The horse track and casino. So
now this is Boston South, though. This isn't the county.
The county is part and parcel with this. You can't separate the county from Boston South. They are leasing this property. They are interested in the revenue. The only reason this came forward is because the county wanted it to see it happen. I mean, they tried a horse track and casino in Wareham, and they got totally told, take a hike. And then next thing you know, it shows up here. What I'm saying is the context is one where there's not a lot of trust about what's going to happen there. So, that being said, the proposal that I saw from Mr. Tripp and another individual,
Loring Tripp,
yes,
who works for Boston South,
showed a creative but very intense use of the property. And it was short on ultimate details, but it still showed several thousand residences, several major commercial buildings, a mini stadium, all sorts of things like this.
But this wasn't officially shown to anyone, correct? I mean, this has not been officially presented to the town.
That's right.
So you might have seen something that somebody else saw something else?
That's true.
Right. So I don't know how reasonable it is to say that that's their definitive plan, since they have not actually been out yet.
I did see a lot of creativity in that, a lot of interesting and unusual things, and I'm all in favor of that. And of being innovative, of going outside, what do they say, outside the envelope or whatever. At the same time, I would never be, and it's not my decision to make, but personally, and especially as a conservationist, taking that 100 acres, and it's actually 140 with the other properties they've added, and flattening it and create whatever they created, I think that would be a wrong approach. It should be like we talked about with Holtec. The majority should be kept. It's connected to a lot of the trails and other things in town. And so you could still do some interesting work there, some concentrated cluster zoned area. Excuse me.
No worries.
But I wouldn't want to see, what I really thought I saw, and again, you're right, who saw what? I don't know if they were showing different plans to different people, but what I really saw was something as intense and clear-cutting and sanding, gravel removing as the horse track and casino would have been. It was just a different use of the property, but the same level of intensity, concentration, congestion, homes, it would really be a dramatic.
Okay. But again, until you actually see what is proposed to the town, right? Yeah. I mean, no one can vote on this, nobody can decide on this.
I assume that what they were showing me, they were showing other people, but I can't guarantee that. That's
right.
For certain.
And
they may come back with something different.
Right.
Now.
It hasn't been shown to the public, so the public has not seen this. So in the end,
the property has a lot of potential.
Okay.
We actually went to them, that is conservation group and other people that were trying to fight the sand and gravel and the solar array, and said, look, you've got about 50 acres already degraded. There's a cell tower, there's a demolition debris place, there's a few other things, and it's really not in good shape. As a matter of fact, there were dumped things there. There were old fire trucks dumped there. We said, take that property. It was on one side of a power line. Take that property and turn it into more of the industrial park. Make a commercial development out of it, but give the rest to the town and connect it into the trails and things that are in the town, or at least should be in the town, connected to other areas. And that was, they never entertained that notion at all. And in fact, they never let us do a natural species inventory. We wanted to do that and see if there are any rare or special species there. They didn't want that.
Who's they?
That's the county.
The county didn't want that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. More to come on that, I'm sure. Question number 4. What are your greatest hopes and fears for the town of Plymouth?
I think we've been talking about them, right? We've been talking about certain properties that end up being sold and covered in $1-million homes because they have a view of Cape Cod, and I see development out of control where we're not preserving the things we need to preserve for the future. We are getting obsessed with water in town, which is a good thing. But I think people still have a sense that we have a wealth of water. Well, we do, but it is the most fragile resource you could possibly have. It's a sandy sponge. It's right beneath the surface. It's connected to almost every body of water in town. So the ability to pollute that is easy. And of course, we are now, coming to an awareness across the country, if not the world, that we've been dumping all sorts of things into our water. They talk about these forever chemicals and PFAS and other things. We have to address those issues. So I'd actually like to see us embark on an attempt to make all of our ponds drinkable. That's a really idealistic thing. But at the same time, if we did that, we would be a gem in the country, that this whole town has clean water and everybody understands the value of water. Wow. And I think we should do things like that because, I believe that this town is not as important for its history as it is for its natural history. This is a globally rare ecoregion with all these state-listed rare species, and it's been kind of given to us. And I think we need to emphasize that's who we are.
Okay. What has Plymouth done really well, in your opinion? What has the town done really well?
Well, I have to give credit, and I used to humorously talk about this, for when I first moved to town, it was on the downhill. It was in the mid-'80s, and the malls had taken most of the businesses out of town.
Yeah.
The town had made a couple mistakes, I think, in terms of taking the courthouse out of the downtown and putting it out on Obery and the registry of deeds, because essentially you've eviscerated the downtown. You don't have lawyers, you don't have courts, you don't have police down there, you don't have business, coffee houses. So I remember I was covering the town then as reporter for the Old Colony, and I always say to people that it may still be true that I never saw the select board turn down a liquor license application. So anybody that wanted to put a pub in here, a gastropub in there, a restaurant in there, I'm not saying that they were sloppy about it, but they facilitated that. And before you knew it, we had, when I first moved to town, there might have been 3 restaurants downtown that you thought of as restaurants to go to. Now, how many would you say there are? There's 20, 25.
Which is actually good, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm saying they revitalized town by essentially allowing entrepreneurs and business people to go in and do what they need to do. I think maybe we need to put some brakes on that now, but at the same time, that's not a planning board issue. That's a aesthetic or community issue,
And let me just ask you one thing. When you just said it's a planning board issue, if you get elected, you're one of 5 people. So what do you think the process is to get people to see things your way?
Well, I don't really want them to see them my way because I believe that I am a product of what people in this community have taught me. When I came here, I came here well before I was a reporter in town, but I had no idea what a pine barrens was, what an ecosystem was, what the coastal plain ponds, these rare communities that I'm now kind of obsessed with were, and I was educated by people in this community. One of the facts that I find most interesting is that our old master plan, which is our existing master plan, mentioned the pine barrens, mentioned preserving the Holtec property, as we call it now, mentioned the character of Chiltonville and preserving that. So, What was the question?
It was just about how your opinion, how you get other people to to buy into what you believe is important.
I really think a lot of people understand now that these walks in the woods are more important than just for a stroll, that our water is not just an interesting factoid, it's a major element of our existence, our quality of life, our health and biodiversity. That we love this town because of its beaches and hills and woods and flowers. The history is interesting too, of course. I live downtown, and I've been very involved in the historical aspects, but I was really persuaded by the people around me, pulled into their understanding of the value of this area, and became a converted conservationist, a very dangerous thing, you know.
All right.
Hello. I'm Frank Mann, candidate for Planning Board, and I have a closing statement. Precious. This town is precious to me. Its history, its character, its wealth of natural gifts, and most importantly, its people. They're all precious to me. That's why since I first moved here about 40 years ago, I've been involved. Little League president, task force to end homelessness, community planning board member. When you care about a community, you feel the need to help that community prosper. Plain and simple, that's the job of the planning board. But not prosper in simple terms, to prosper in the broadest sense, to thrive. That's why I was so opposed to the horse track and casino project. Sure, certain groups would have prospered if it had gone through, but overall, the town would have suffered. That's why I oppose unnecessary sand and gravel grabs. And that's why I've worked so hard to preserve the last of our open, wooded, and wild spaces. Being for preservation, though, biodiversity and climate resiliency does not mean being opposed to commercial development. Not at all. I simply want all development, commercial and residential, to reflect our understanding of the importance of our natural gifts. In Massachusetts, 25% of all carbon emissions are absorbed by trees. In Plymouth, all of our water comes from a giant sandy sponge right beneath our feet. We can't afford to pollute it, to sell it, or to give it away. I don't apologize for bringing a conservation perspective to the planning board. I don't apologize for letting my affection for the community affect my decisions. Planning board members do not need to have engineering skills or development experience to be effective. The town has paid professional staff with those skills and experience. To be effective, planning board members should understand the concerns of residents and work to ensure those concerns are addressed in every project, large and small. That's what I did when you elected me several years ago, and that's what I will do if I'm elected again. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much. We wish you the best during this campaign and during the election season. And please do make your choices heard by voting on or before the 18th of May for the Plymouth town elections. Thank you and good day.